Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Elevated Medicine Podcast. This is for July 2026. This also will be part of our bonus material for our symposium, our eighth annual symposium that goes live on July 15th. So, podcast will be early July, and then this material will also be available for participants and enrollees mid-July of this year. So I am going to turn over this now to Stephanie, who's going to introduce the topic and the speakers for this podcast. Stephanie?
All right, thanks, Dr. Salibi. Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the glycocalyx and glycochecks and all kinds of words you've never heard before. And we have two very special ladies back with us again today. Um, uh, Karen Gadol is a physician's assistant, and she's been working in Charleston. She's got 27 years of experience, and she introduced us to Pam Holloway. Pam, you're welcome. Let everybody see you for a second.
Thank
um,
you.
you're a registered nurse, and you founded OG Pro, which the OG stands for Ozonated Glycerin Collaborative, and you've spent years working with this. In 30 seconds, can you tell us who is OG Pro and what brought you here?
First of all, you're way too gracious about the years of working with this because I first actually really dove into ozonated glycerin in late 2024, early 2025. So it's actually, I have years of ozone experience, but not with ozonated glycerin. Ozonated glycerin is pretty much a new thing. Ozonated glycerin is a glycerin molecule that houses oxygen, ozone, inside of it. And it's like a slow releasing peroxide. And the beauty of it is that it is like a long, gentle acting peroxide and then has all the benefits that a peroxide has. And so what we are seeing is we are seeing some amazing recoveries right now with tumors shrinking, organs regrowing. We're seeing difference in joints healing. We are seeing that it rematrices bone, so it's having some incredible dental uses. And it's so big that it has actually led to Dr. Jim Bridge being the keynote speaker for AAOT, American Academy of Ozone Therapy, and Frontiers in Ozone for the last year and a half now. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We'll touch on it a little bit today as we talk about glycocalyx. It was actually ozonated glycerin that pulled me into glycocalyx because I'm like, why is this working? How is this working? And so we'll get into a little bit about what we know and what we theorize.
Yes, I mean, so most people have heard that things like smoking or high blood pressure or diabetes causes their risk factors for cardiovascular events to happen. But can you tell us a little bit more about this glycocalyx and why that is a better predictor or an indicator for that risk?
Yeah, the glycocalyx for, to put it in a nutshell, it is the largest organ you've never heard of. And
Mhm.
so what I'm going to actually do is I'm actually going to share a little bit from our presentation that we have out now, training healthcare, medical care practitioners on it. It has CEs, about 20 CEs that we've got attached to it, stuff like that. I'm going to share with you a few slides from that presentation so you can see what we're doing there. This is a picture of what the glycocalyx actually looks like. And what it is it's a gel-like lining that is on every single organ, every single vessel in your body. And it's like 60,000 miles of capillaries. And so it lines 60,000 miles of capillaries with this gel-like lining that its thickest is only 50 nanometers. That's like, 10,000 square feet, like, being in your high school gymnasium. That's how much surface area this covers. It's much larger than our skin as an organ. Its purpose is it delivers the nutrients as well as transfers the waste, and it keeps the red blood cells from sticking on the capillary wall. And I'll show you a quick little image of that. This right here, you're actually looking at the cross section of an actual capillary.
Mm.
And it has like, it almost looks like seaweed out there, and it keeps the red blood cells flowing through one by one. Now, when that's not functioning right, when it gets way too short and is not being cared for, it then starts looking like a pasture that's been overgrazed and you get bare ground. And then that's when we get plaque buildup. That then will cause these blood sugar swings. It will, dysregulation of blood sugar. It'll cause dysregulation of blood pressure. It will lead to what ends up being coronary artery disease, and that's when we start seeing stents needed. It will lead to decrease in renal function. It'll lead to decrease in vision, smell, taste, everything that's microvasculature.
Mm.
It dramatically impacts.
10,000 square feet. That's pretty wild that it's largely unknown and yet such a huge, really is our largest organ, like you shared, Pam. So from your perspective, really, who is this podcast for? I mean, practitioners,
Uh,
lay people?
Everyone, yeah,
Yeah.
for healthcare practitioners, it's like, we're always down here in the weeds, and of course this is really in the weeds,
Yeah.
but we're always really looking for, way down the line at where's the root cause of things. Well, hello. If the glycocalyx isn't functioning, nothing's going to function.
Mm.
And that goes back to the Mystic study. Now, for lay people, here's the deal. Here you are taking medications, you're doing everything you think's right, you're trying to eat right, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't figure out what actually impacts the glycocalyx and take care of that, you're 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 whistling Dixie here. I mean, you really are. I'll give you an example. I have one couple that I assessed their glycocalyx, and this was fascinating. The wife is like, dress right, dress. Everything is done just perfectly. She's monitoring her diet, she's doing her exercise, she's trying to make sure she gets the right sleep, but she's also a stress basket. Her husband, meantime, is a kuna matata. He takes his vitamins, he exercises some, but his stress level's like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it. Check their glycocalyx. Hers is in the toilet, his is doing great. And she's like, that's not fair. And I'm like, okay, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. There is a component with the glycocalyx that really appears to be related to autonomic nervous system, related to what we see going on with with the vagus nerve and the vagal response. There's this correlation going on here that I'm theorizing at this point, but I've seen enough test results now that I'm like, A, absolutely do what's right for your body. B, really need to look at what we're doing with all of the things that affect that stress level. And that directly impacts the glycocalyx quickly. And I have watched the glycocalyx scores go up and down rapidly, like a blood pressure.
Mm. Very interesting. You mentioned test scores. I know we've talked about the GlycoCheck camera in a past episode, but for those that may not have seen it, real quickly, can you just tell us anything about those testing or how you're testing?
Yeah. The Glycocheck is a microvasculature measuring tool. What it is it's a camera that is that you take and we take and put underneath the tongue, and it measures at the microscopic level. So literally, once I put it underneath the tongue, this is not the image I see. What the camera actually looks like is what you're seeing right here in image A. We literally put it under the tongue like you would go to check your temperature with a thermometer.
Mhm.
And at the back of the tongue, we just lightly touch it with the camera. Can't crush into it or you ruin your image. You end up seeing what we see here on this slide. You actually end up seeing the microvasculature. And then, based upon what we're seeing with that microvasculature, it takes hundreds of images quickly. From there, they actually, we have the ability to see what is healthy glycocalyx and what is unhealthy glycocalyx. And that is what's called a perfused boundary region. And so it is the thickness of that glycocalyx that determines a portion of the health of the glycocalyx. We look at 4, 5, and 6 micron size capillaries. So we can see if the body is experiencing neurogen, is, generating that capillary vasculature system, and we get an idea of how well it's functioning. When we start losing those capillaries, this goes to what they found in what they call the MYSTIC study back in 2021, Dr. Hans Vink and team. What they did is they assessed patients in the ICU that had COVID.
Mm.
And what they found is if they had a 50 to a 90% loss of capillary density while they were being mechanically, first of all, that occurred from mechanic ventilation. Microvascular capillary density really dramatically increases. And if they were unable to recover that capillary density, those are the ones that actually did not survive the mechanical ventilation process.
Mm.
Mhm.
And so now knowing that, we know that what we need to be focusing on is supporting that glycocalyx and not just really so much focusing on the ventilation component. We really need to be focusing on giving the body what it needs to be able to continue to have a functioning glycocalyx if we want patients to have good outcomes.
Mhm. So that helps explain why some people had cardiovascular problems with COVID versus other people who didn't.
Exactly. Exactly. And the reality of the situation is when it comes down to being able to recover from COVID, it came down to the health of the glycocalyx. It came down to glutathione and your body's ability to produce glutathione. Turns out that the largest organ in the body that produces glutathione is actually the lungs, which was something I did not know before COVID. And the fact that if people had the resiliency and the capability to produce that, or if they were given either medications or nutraceuticals that supported that, they had a much better recovery.
Okay. Because the ACE2 receptor is in the endothelial lining, which is protected by the glycocalyx. So maybe what you're saying is, are you saying like the spike protein couldn't attach to that ACE2 receptor because the glycocalyx was kind of protecting it?
That would be theory at this point. We don't know. It's a good theory. What we do know is that based upon the structure of the glycocalyx with that three sugar polymer, that heparan sulfate with that hyaluronic acid, you're going to get a much better ability, you're going to get a much better boundary, right? So that's going to be one thing that's going on there. The second thing that I think that is probably going on there regarding that spike protein is the fact that the glycocalyx actually has a reservoir of antioxidant enzymes that actually helps neutralize the damage. So I would think that probably had an impact there.
Mm. Didn't
Well,
have a reserve, if you will.
Yeah.
yeah, I like just hearing you think out loud about that. So you've talked a little bit about what the glycocalyx is made up of. If we were inside the capillary looking at all this seaweed or grass-like stuff coming around us, what else would we see, or how would you describe what we would see?
Ooh, I just had a flash of what is it? Magic School Bus?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever saw that with your kids. I was a homeschool mom. We
Yeah.
had Magic School Bus, and Mrs. Frizzle would take the kids on these explorations of the human body in the Magic School Bus. So I'm sorry, I just went there. That is going to be a great visual. So let's get into our Magic School Bus, and we go into the body. And of course, we're going through the we're going in through the capillaries, and we're going to stop the bus and we're going to look at the sidewall. And what we're going to see, and when we get into those smallest ones, is first of all, the red blood cells are like, get out of my way, get out of my way. Because honestly, we would actually block an individual red blood cell from being able to flow down through that capillary. And the tiniest capillary, those red blood cells actually squish down in order to go shooting through one by one. And what's really cool is when we measure, we can actually see that. So they wouldn't be happy about our school bus being there.
Mm.
But let's say this is a little bit larger capillary and our school bus can scoot to the side. What we'll see is we'll see those red blood cells shooting through one at a time. And as they're shooting through, we will see the wave of the glycocalyx waving back and forth, just, lightly touching him, keeping him from touching the walls. And then we're going to see the transfer of nutrients coming in. We're going to see waste transporting out. We're going to see that transport system working there as those cells are moving through. And so you're just gonna it's almost gonna be like if you were looking down at the ocean floor and you were looking at the kelp on the bottom just waving. And then if there's a threat, you're gonna see it all shut down, right? You're gonna see it try to protect itself and shut down. And think about it, when we get into a stressful situation, what happens at the external capillary level, right? We start shutting things down. So if you start thinking about danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger, cell danger response, the glycocalyx is very appropriately going to lock down, shut down. The body's going to start prioritizing all those things that it needs to do to protect itself. The
Mhm.
issue is this. If that danger doesn't pass, if we stay in that sympathetic nervous system state, so think about our stress levels, right? Think about how we're always doing that. We're shutting down that ebb and flow of that glycocalyx. Okay, that's one of the things that I think is probably happening in there. The other thing that I suspect that is really happening in there is the fact that as that glycocalyx is looking to try to recover and looking to try to function appropriately, the more we are in that clamped down state, the more we are getting exposed to electromagnetic radiation because the glycocalyx is very strongly negatively charged. Okay. And like repels like, which is the bacteria. All of those things are negatively charged. So the glycocalyx is repelling all of that. But I think that when we get high levels of electromagnetic radiation, it's shutting that system down, and then we're starting to experience it opens the door for damage. So interestingly to note, and we've got multiple practitioners that have tested this now, things like, when we're doing PEMF therapy, electrical magnetic frequency therapy, those PEMF mats,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that's good or bad. But what we are seeing is that when we do that every time we do that, the glycocalyx tanks. It takes about 24 hours to recover. So is it a hormetic effect where if you pulse it every once in a while, it's really good? Or is it just causing damage? We don't know the answers to that yet. I'd love to see some of that research happen. But what we do know is that when exposed to electromagnetic radiation field continuously, it's damaging to the glycocalyx. This makes us think differently when it comes to electricity, when it comes to, holding these cell phones in our hands and stuff like that. It makes us think differently about setting computers on our laps. And also, it really gets me thinking differently about light itself, especially, the sunlight and the infrared therapy, because those things actually support and appear to help the glycocalyx. So we really are not just a bag of chemicals. We really are energy housed in this physical structure, and it's just beautiful.
Mhm.
Well, it certainly sounds like we need to do everything possible to protect our glycocalyx. And I think the first step of that is obviously awareness. Um, from my understanding, it was originally discovered by a Dutch researcher, Dr. Hans Vink, and I believe in some of the stuff I've listened to from the Research Institute, the Glycocalyx Research Institute, he refers to it as the Teflon coating. And
Yes.
so I think that goes along with what you've just shared in terms of its ability to um, not reject, but help protect us like a Teflon coating. Is there anything else around that, Pam, that you think we need to be aware of around that Teflon aspect of the glycocalyx?
There's a couple of components there that I think really need to be hit on. First of all, Hans Fink was the first to visualize, to actually catch images of the glycocalyx. It was actually Dr. Barry Ninham, who's a physical chemist out of Australia, who has actually theorized the existence of the glycocalyx for quite a while. He actually did the physical chemistry and said, okay, the thing we're teaching in biology, the thing that all of us learned in our high school biology class and our college biology classes and in medical school, if we went to medical school,
Mhm.
is wrong. Now, the part that's really scary is it's still wrong. But Hans Fink actually proved what Barry Ninham theorized with the actual visualization of the glycocalyx. Now, there's a paper that just came out recently that was written by Dr. Barry Ninham and Martha Carlin, who's really focused on microbiome research, particularly in the area of Parkinson's. And what they're theorizing is that not only is it a Teflon coating, but that there's this nanobubble structure that's going on. And that is these nanobubbles that are making a huge difference. That paper just came out in 2025. You can find it by, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but if you look up Martha Carlin, Barry Ninham, Ninham, 2025 on the PubMed. That paper should pop up, and it does a beautiful job of explaining what we know versus what we theorize. I can get into that a little bit, if we need to. Um, but literally, it that's where the intersection started happening with the ozonated glycerin and where it really seemed like what I was looking at from the OG side was why was it working? Well, it very well could be because of this nanobubble structure and the fact that the OG increases the nanobubbles, and then those then are impacting transport system and things like that. This is all brand new stuff. It's a lot we're learning, but in a nutshell, the more that we support that polymer structure, the better opportunity we have for having a healthy glycocalyx.
Mm.
Well, why aren't doctors talking to their patients about this? Or why didn't
Do
they
you
some
want the political answer or do you want the what I suspect real answer? Let me give you the political answer. Physicians and them are they're just too busy, okay? They're slammed with patients and the time to really sit down and learn is just tough. Now, what learning do they get? They get the learning that's fed to them, and how do they get that? They get that through pharmaceutical companies. There's no profit in this. Can I just be blunt? There's no profit. This is not patentable. It's not profitable. You can patent the measuring of it, which has been done, and there's over 140 research hospitals. But what's interesting is I'm not hearing where those 140 research hospitals have pulled it into full-on practical application other than the measurement. Now, pharmaceutical can come up with drugs that treat the glycocalyx. I think you're going to see more about it. But what we found that really impacts the glycocalyx are the fucoidins, which is a brown seaweed. And that's not patentable. So I think that might be part of the issue. The other issue I suspect is the fact that we're just slow on catching up with the science. We really are. Now, the good news is that there are conferences. The American Academy of Ozone Therapy actually had Dr. Hans Vink come and speak. There are other conferences that are, the integrated medicine, functional medicine world starting to bring this in more. But from the standard medicine world, if we repair the glycocalyx, we don't need the blood pressures nearly at the level we do. And I will give you one particular example. If you repair the glycocalyx and start reversing renal disease, how much dialysis are we going to need?
Mm.
And that's a huge major industry. And let's say, no offense, let's say I'm a cardiovascular surgeon who just graduated from school with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And my bread and butter is stents. If we don't need stents, how do I keep the lights on? How's the hospital make money?
Mm.
And I'm not trying to be harsh, but our entire healthcare system is a sick care system. And if that money goes away, how are they going to keep the lights on? So from our approach, you know, we're actually kind of the rogue ones over here. We actually look for everything we can to decentralize that so we don't need the hospitals. But this is where a lot of the work that needs to happen in the administration, and I'm not going to go political on you guys, but it's really, really hard because they're getting hit with all the lobbyists and everything else. And yet the answers to healing, the answers to health are in reconnecting with nature, looking at what we're doing in our home environment, and really focusing on what we can do for ourselves. In fact, on the ogpro.org website, that's ogpro.org, there is called something called the OG support system that we're building out. And people can literally go in there and take an interactive questionnaire that focuses on all the different areas, and this will then give people what they can do for themselves. And it's individualized, personalized to them. And here's the really cool part. They have the ability to go in and take it over and over and over again, and then work on those areas where their score is low and slowly start bringing it up. And as we do that, we improve our resilience. We improve our glycocalyx. And also, I suspect we'll see some reversing of things like depression and anxiety and things like that through fixing some of those lifestyle factors.
Mm. That's interesting too that you described the brown seaweed as something that helps rebuild the glycocalyx, and it looks like seaweed itself. So it's almost
You
like
know, there's this theory that goes all the way back, like kidney beans and the shape of the kidney bean and what does it look like in your body and what does it do for your body? In fact, why is it even called a kidney bean? There really is this component that I always jokingly say they're God winks, where what's out there in nature is put there if we just open our eyes to help us. So I live on a small farm, and one season we were just over inundated with mullein. Okay, and it is like invasive. I mean, it's like everywhere. And most people would be like, "Oh, it's this invasive weed. We got to get rid of it." I'm looking at it going, are we looking at respiratory issues that are going to be really coming up this fall? And there's a beautiful young woman in my community who is just super, super smart, an amazing young woman. And I literally said to her, I said, "Hey, I got mullein like crazy all over my farm right now. Do you want to come harvest it and make tinctures out of it for this winter?" And so she came and she harvested the mullein and made tinctures for the winter. And sure enough, it was a pretty bad respiratory winter. I actually think that we're always getting these little God winks that are telling us what to look for and what to do. We just have to be open to it.
love that.
So let's talk
Circling
about,
back.
yeah, circling back. One of the things that we hear most prevalent today is the increase in really all chronic disease, but diabetes,
Mhm.
cancer, certainly heart disease, our number one killer. Relate that a little specifically, Pam, to the glycocalyx and um, how does it all fit together in the same story?
Sure. So there are six things that the glycocalyx really does that really mitigate all of that. It keeps the fluid inside the blood vessels where it belongs, okay, and that's where the barrier functions. So that right there is step one. Number two, it keeps the cells from sticking to the vessel walls, which prevents the plaque buildup, which then of course causes, hardening of the arteries. We see the blood pressure issues, we see blah blah blah. It facilitates the exchange between the blood and the tissue, right? So you got that nutrient transport going on. So then you're getting rid of the taste, the waste. That then, of course, directly, again, when we get, all of that extra junk in that, fluid space there, it's like having dirty oil, right? Everything starts to break down. And that then will lead to cancer. I mean, this is where we start getting into lifestyle factors of fasting, right? Something super simple where your body starts getting rid of it for itself. So if we can start moving into fasting cycles now, time of life, what else is going on that all impacts all of that? Talk to your healthcare practitioner about those things. Perimenopause, sometimes not the best time to do long fasting, some of those issues because the body's already stressed. But the other thing that we look at is it holds the reservoir of the antioxidant enzymes, which then gets rid of those troubling things that we just talked about a few minutes ago. It also controls the balance between inflammation and clotting.
Mhm.
So when we start thinking about those types of things, okay, now you're talking all the microvascular disease stuff, which was huge with COVID and what we've seen post-COVID. You see all the neurological stuff, right, that is being massively influenced. So when I start thinking about it, I'm like, okay, what does this not impact? What disease does this not impact? And the answer is there isn't one. I'll give you one case. Uh, Crazy story. There was a woman whose husband was experiencing some cardiovascular issues. So I put him on a double dose of the Revasca. Um, and, he literally, I put him on it so that he could start healing. And what was crazy is she started taking it. I didn't even know she was taking it. And she started double dosing it. Okay. Yes, you can double dose it. Works beautifully. Don't automatically go straight to double dosing. It's very likely you're going to get lightheaded. You can have some real blood sugar issues because a lot of people now have chronic blood sugar, blood pressure issues, things like that. Okay, so, start slow, work your way up. Um, what ended up happening is after 6 weeks of being on it, one day I get a message from her. She tells me that the floaters in her eyes have disappeared. She's had them there for 30 years due to a TBI that happened on her wedding night.
Mhm.
And she's had these floaters. They've always been a problem. Floaters are gone. Not only are her floaters gone, the pain in her hip from that same car accident that happened on her wedding night, pain in her hip is gone. She's seen chiropractic, she's done all sorts of things for years. She's not been able to alleviate the pain in the hip. The only thing I could think of is the glycocalyx was repairing the microvasculature, which then allowed the body to repair that underlying damage. And that was the only change she had made from everything else she had been doing.
Fascinating. Well, and even we all know of cases where you've got a patient that, maybe has chronic fatigue or other long viral syndromes, or they just feel awful and we don't know why. Everything we test is not giving us a clear answer on why they're feeling so poorly. Um, I think that could even have an impact here too. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say, we're constantly going, oh, go to counseling. You're depressed. And saying that that doesn't help. But I'm telling you right now, it's like asking someone to run a mile on a broken leg. You got to fix the broken leg. So, when it comes to anxiety, depression, the chronic illness stuff, everything that we're seeing, if we don't get to the root cause and fix that root cause of fixing that glycocalyx, getting oxygen through the body, which is what the ozonated glycerin does so beautifully, knocking out all the little buggies, which the ozonated glycerin does beautifully, um, if we don't do that, we're asking him to push a boulder uphill. We're asking him to run 2 miles on a broken leg.
Mhm.
By golly, can we just, they're screaming, they're crying out for help. Can we just support the underlying mechanisms of the body so that, the body can heal itself? Because it will. It is miraculously and wonderfully made. It will, it has the innate intelligence. It wants to heal. It just needs the tools to do so.
Well, let's talk to you a little bit about just aging, because in some of my research on the glycocalyx, I've heard them talk about early warning signs, hair thinning, erectile dysfunction, brain fog. And these are things that we often associate just as, quote, normal with aging. Speak to that a little bit.
Not normal. You know, there's a there's a biblical scripture that would happen over and over again, fell asleep and was no more. I mean, literally, we are intended to be vibrant, healthy, working. And, it should be lights on, lights off one day, right? I mean, it shouldn't be, we should not see this chronic, slow, long decline. We really shouldn't. The chronic high blood sugar, the chronic oxidative stress, all of that type stuff is coming as a result of the toxins in our environment. Now, those
Mhm.
can be physical toxins like the surfactants, and this is a big one. And
Mhm.
I'd love to say it got better, recently, but COVID, like, oh my goodness, it made it worse because there's all these surfactants in our cleaning products. Those surfactants destroy the glycocalyx. It destroys that gel-like boundary. So what is a surfactant? Things like sodium lauryl sulfate, the detergent, so like the laundry detergents,
Mhm.
right? Sodium lauryl sulfate, toothpaste, right?
Mhm.
It's in our toothpaste. It's in all of our hand sanitizers. It's everywhere. In our, for our farmers, it's what we use to clean the cow teats with those cloths, those cloth wipes that they throw away before we actually start milking. In Think about the wipes that we're using on baby bottoms. Think about the
Mhm.
wipes that the elderly are using on their bottoms, right? Sodium lauryl sulfate or some other surfactant. There's many, it's a category, there's a bunch of different types of surfactants in there. All of those things. In fact, I think I have a slide on that. Here we go. Here's some examples of some of those types of things that actually destroy
Mhm.
the that glycocalyx layer. And Dr. Barry Ninham did a great job in showing this. So dish soaps, facial products, cosmetics, laundry detergents, toothpaste, all of that massively damages it. We need
Mhm.
to get those out of our life and go to using natural things again. So, your goat's milk soap that is made by your local farmer. I love that. All the things that we can do to support our small little local community and part of it. If we go to using like Pure O3 has a toothpaste and a mouthwash that doesn't have any of those types of things. They're actually using ozone. And here's a crazy thing that we're finding that when we're using ozonate glycerin in these situations, this is an autistic girl who's a teenager who has trouble with her hearing. She is verbal. She's had trouble sleeping through the night. Her mom started her on nebulizing ozonated glycerin. She slept through the night for the first time in years and didn't wake up. And within a couple weeks, her teachers reported that she no longer had halitosis, and
Mhm.
she actually reported that her hearing had improved.
Mhm.
So it's amazing what happens because I suspect what that OG is doing is it's knocking out the little buggies and it's also supporting that glycocalyx. So, there's a lot that really goes into supporting this glycocalyx. And we've already hit on some of these, but this is some of the things that we know can support the glycocalyx. So the polyphenols are big, the resveratrol, the quercetin, all the things that help it activate NRF2, the omega-3 fatty acids, of course, watching your blood sugar, getting your sleep, avoiding those surfactants, not smoking, and then clinical, it shows that hydrocortisone, now this is not something we want to be doing on a routine basis, but if you're dealing with a massive sepsis, you're in a hospital, blah, 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 we're in the cytokine storm, blah, 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 blah. At that point, when we're starting to get that massive shedding that occurs, these are some of the tools that actually really work with supporting. Now, I prefer things like the ozonate glycerin, and I have not had the opportunity to see that used in an ICU environment yet. I'm looking hopefully forward to that someday. But we have used it in a home environment with great success. So
Mhm.
that gives you a little bit on that area.
Absolutely. Well, it shows that it really matters what we put into and onto our body. And, kind of from my perspective, if we can't eat it in a healthy manner, if it's not good for us, it really shouldn't be in either environment or using it in our home to clean or in our laundry, etc. It's something
Exactly.
we truly have to look at everything in our lives.
Exactly.
We talked earlier about the glycocheck in terms of a measuring device, but like in our community, we don't yet have that capability. Hopefully one day we'll get you here and we'll do something about that, or one of us as a provider will bring it into the community. But if someone's interested in supporting the glycocalyx from a nutritional perspective and don't have access to have it tested, do they need to have it tested before they start on supporting it?
Heavens, no. Do not. I mean, seriously. Knowing, the statue like Glycocalyx is amazing and wonderful and great, yes. However, if someone is, it's still fairly expensive to do the testing at this point. I actually think it should be as common as a blood pressure. I'm looking forward to technology continuing to move forward here and being able to get the cost of the equipment down, and increase the availability. And it looks like there may be some things coming up that are going to make this much more easily accessible. So I'm pretty excited to see some of that happen. But the most important thing is just do the right thing, right? Do you need to be checking your blood sugar every 5 seconds to know that do we all need to be walking around with CGMs on every single step of the way to know what's affecting our blood sugar? No. Is it good to do for a short period of time so you can learn? Yeah, absolutely. It's great. This doing the glyco check really, really helps with patient compliance because a picture is worth a thousand words, right? So it really helps from that aspect. But from the aspect of the lifestyle things that improve the glycocalyx, literally if someone wants to measure, super inexpensive to do so, go on the ogpro.org, sign up for the OG support system that is on that website, and just use that as a tool, right? I mean, that's a super easy tool to use, and you can use it over and over and over again. You can do it right there from your phone or your computer, and then just start implementing those lifestyle factors, right? Just print it up, just take a picture of it, and start implementing those lifestyle factors. And how are you going to know whether or not you're making a difference? How do you feel? Do you have more pep in your step? Do you sleep better? Is your vision improving? I've had a lot of people tell me that they're taking their glasses off. They don't need their readers quite as much. Their sense of smell is improving. Food is tasting better. They have more joy, right? Those are the things that I would be looking for.
Okay. So it sounds like the glycocalyx can be damaged quite quickly, daily assaults, and I would assume it can also repair quite quickly.
Yes. So with supplementation, I'll give you an example. There is a extremely well-known physician and his wife who are major athletes that are internationally known, and their clinic is quite famous. And we did their glycocalyx assessment with the glycocheck at the beginning of a 3-day conference. They were shocked at their scores because these are regenerative medicine leading in the field. They're the ones that we all aspire to be like, right? Their glycocalyx scores were tanked, and we figured out they were tanked because of the fact that there was too much constant stress on the glycocalyx
Mm.
without enough support. So they double dosed immediately because they are in the category that can jump into those things pretty easily. That's one thing we did. And then the other thing that we did is they just focused on their getting quiet and doing those things that were restorative and loving to their body, even though they were at this 3-day conference, focusing on breathing a little bit more joy. We reassessed their glycocalyx and at the end of the conference, and their score had dramatically increased to being one of the best at the conference.
Mm. That's fantastic.
So, if you have the ability to supplement, supplement. If you don't have the ability to supplement, the number one most important thing you can do, go outside, spend some time in the sunshine, get barefoot, put your feet on the ground, gaze off in the distance at something green, listen to nature, observe nature, and right there you're improving that glycocalyx.
Yeah. Really important in our stressful world today because our nervous system is under a constant assault. And I think most of us don't take the time to slow down, even though when we know it's necessary, we know that it's part of balance and our health. But it's also a practice that we all need to work on incorporating into our daily lives. And so that's really important information. Um,
Exactly. And let me caveat that one more. Yesterday was an extremely busy day because I am in the process of preparing for being at a conference next week. We're keynoting, we're doing a meet and greet, blah, blah, blah. Um, I had an incredibly beautifully productive day. I interacted with the most amazing people, just like I'm interacting with you guys here. That night, there was something that was just nudging me. You know what I'm saying? As I'm kind of going, thank you for the day,
mhm,
grateful.
mhm,
But what was nudging me was the fact that there was an incredible exchange of knowledge that occurred that day. But I felt like something was missing. And a dear friend pointed it out to me early this morning because we meet and pray together in the morning. She pointed out there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And what was missing was the relationship that goes with that interaction.
mhm,
And that's what I was picking up on that was missing. There was so much knowledge transfer. Bop, 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 bop. But there wasn't the moment of quiet knowing and connection that we can't even put words to.
mhm,
So the more the world throws at us and says go fast, the more we need to be very conscientious about slowing down and connecting with those that are physically in our circle.
mhm. Yeah, that's good.
That's going to heal your glycocalyx too.
That's good. Good reminder for me, especially. I'll take that as a personal recommendation. Um, you mentioned supplementation a few minutes ago. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, there is a supplement that's out there that was put together by the Glycocalyx Research Institute called Revasca. Um, it actually shows some pretty good success, actually really good success at the NRF2, nitric oxide, all of that type of stuff. There are other companies that have supplements out there as well. Calroy has one called Arturasil. That's actually an early, according to the CEO of Glycocalyx Research Institute, he says that Arturasil and the Endocalyx Pro, that both of those were earlier iterations that he developed,
Mhm,
and that the latest iteration is the Revasca.
mhm,
Full disclosure, I do have an affiliate with them. If people want to get Revasca, if they use the code PAM, PAM, they get 10% off. I believe, Karen, you may also have an account with them, and
I,
you probably have a discount code as well. So what's yours?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I
Okay.
have to look it
Reach
up.
out to Karen if you're her patient. Go use her discount code. It helps us all keep the lights on as practitioners. But if you're somewhere across the country, you can use discount code PAM. If people want to set up practitioners want to set up a wholesale account, if they use discount code PAM when they set up their wholesale account, it will actually give them 10% off their wholesale order, which also helps them in their practice and stuff like that. So if it works, great. If there's someone else's code you want to use someone else's code, but take advantage and get that discount so you can do some of that type of work there. There's other supplementation that I also believe works, as you saw here, things like the quercetin, things like the resveratrol, the polyphenols. I have seen some people test very high that were not doing the fucoidins. They had great lifestyle practices, and there was some other supplementation that they were doing in that polyphenol area that was really pulling in.
Mm, excellent.
So I've pulled up a quick slide here about what we know and what we don't know, because I see that we're coming up here on our 1 hour mark here pretty quick. So I wanted to go ahead and just hit on this real quick. For those of you who like to geek out, you can see all of the things that we do know here with the NRF2 activation, IL-6, IL-8 suppression, which slows down that glycocalyx shedding cascade. The collagen stimulation, who doesn't want that, right? Better skincare. Oh, little side note on ozonate glycerin. The Japanese are using it for all of their beauty skincare products in a very high-end line. We can have it for virtually nothing. So you don't have to go buy all those high-end things. Just, you can make your own ozonate glycerin. We teach how to do that on OG Pro, or you can certainly get the product from Pure 3. It also does endothelial barrier support, which reduces that inflammation, right? And that's the core to every chronic disease we're dealing with. It also does have an anti-neoplastic Warburg action, okay? So we can actually reverse some of the cancer issues that we're seeing. So anyone who is dealing with that cancer threat or a cancer issue, ding, 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 focus on your glycocalyx. And then there's also the microvascular improvement. Now, there's some things that we theorize, and that is the fact that the OG directly rebuilds that glycocalyx. We actually think that it's directly impacting through that nanobubble structure. It is doing that hormotic stimulus. It's, you know, helping to reverse, we think, through the IL-6, IL-8 suppression, that we are getting some barrier improvement. By the way, the other thing I'm always going to hit on whenever we hit on this autoimmune thing is really, 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 really want people to focus on their microbiome work and get into the work of some of what BiotiQuest is doing and Martha Carlin, because she's doing some great work in that area, particularly with the product she has called Sugar Shift. It looks like the sugar shift is directly impacting that nanobubble framework and is improving those things that are part of the glycocalyx. And so those are just some of the things that we're seeing about glycocalyx and ozonate glycerin working together. So when I get down to what am I really looking at for protocols at this point, we're doing something called a Parkinson's study right now here in Colorado. And in that Parkinson's study, here's what we're doing. We are measuring glycocalyx and supporting glycocalyx with Revasca. We are improving the microbiome by using Sugar Shift, which is a probiotic. Takes time, takes like 6 months, 3 months to 6 months, depending upon the individual, but we really are seeing some improvements there in other studies. So we're trying that on the Parkinson's patient. We're focusing on the minerals. And the way we're focusing on that is we're focusing on the fulvic humics. Okay, now we have to start slow because people will detox, right? They will have a little bit of a Herxheimer's reaction if you don't start slow. So that's the third component that we're bringing on board. And then the fourth component that I really am focusing on with every single patient is that light exposure in sauna. I need them sweating and I want them getting good red light exposure and sunshine exposure. So light, 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 not the blue LEDs after dark, proper light, proper time. Really more of that phasing type of stuff. So those are the things I would really say in a nutshell that is important for every single individual on this call that you can do pretty easily for yourself, as well as for every practitioner that's out there taking care of patients.
And Stephanie, I know we are running short on time. May I ask one more question before we probably
No, yes.
and Pam, I wanted to just touch on that lymphoma exception. I've
Okay.
heard a little bit about that, but would you just address that briefly as we wrap up?
Yeah, yeah. So here's the deal. Ozonate glycerin is showing a really good impact on, helping with a lot of things, but the lymphomas, it's not really impacting. I mean, it's good, it's palliative, it's helping with pain, it's helping with quality of life, but it's not actually reducing the lymphoma. Well, we think it's because it's having trouble getting the lymph system. So right now, what we're really hoping to do, because we do know of other therapies that do impact those lymphomas, we're looking at combining the ozonated glycerin with DMSO
Mm.
so we can get it
Uh,
in.
Okay.
And over at OG Pro, particularly in the founders members group there, we will be having those conversations. We're hoping to get some case studies going. We're looking to hopefully really work with some of our colleagues there so that we can start figuring out some of this type of thing. Now, I'm going to go rogue on you and give you an example of please, please, please check out OG Pro, check out Glycocalyx Research Institute. But with the OG Pro, we had a story this last week where one day I get the story of a Great Dane who's been diagnosed with osteosarcoma. I kid you not. The next day I'm hearing about a 15-year-old diagnosed with osteosarcoma.
Mm.
Next thing you know, we have an oncology specialist, a integrative medicine specialist, the top veterinarian on ozonated glycerin, and a practitioner in the local area where this 15-year-old is located, a team that came together, all focused on what can we do for this osteosarcoma case in this 15-year-old girl. And by the way, at the same time, what can we do for this Great Dane with osteosarcoma?
Mm.
That is why we built OG Pro.
Mhm.
We want to bring practitioners together. We want to get the education out there. We want the collaborative relationship there. We also want to very quickly be able to get resources to those in need. Now, we got a ways to go. We're just starting, we're just building. But those who are coming in, who are becoming a part of that membership, that then is giving us the funding to build the database, to build the structure in the system so that we can continue to support them.
That's wonderful.
A quick point of clarification. When you mentioned the toothpaste without the surfactant, you said Pure O3. How do you?
Pure O3, PURO3.com. If you just look up Pure, PURO3, you'll see that they have got some wonderful products there that are ozonated that work really, really well. And I'm going to tell you, we've done something really crazy. There was an adolescent who refused to brush his teeth, um, had massive amounts of caries. We know that ozonated glycerin rematrices the bone. I'm going to tell you something nuts, guys. We had him turn ozonated glycerin into a mouthwash with distilled water.
Mhm.
It could be regular water too, really. And we
Mhm.
just had him start rinsing his mouth with that.
Mhm.
And his microbiome in his mouth massively improved. And the caries started getting better. Now we're still in progress on that one. Another one that we know that Lyme lives in the mouth. And a lot of our chronic health issues are coming directly as a result of what's going on in the mouth with the teeth and things like that. When we use ozonated glycerin, other ozonated products in the mouth, it actually does a great job of knocking out a lot of the issues that we're seeing as a result of Lyme and things like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, Puro 3 is a great company. They're doing it right. Um, I actually am in the process. They're getting CGMP certified. They're the only company out there. Okay, quick heads up on ozonated glycerin just for everyone out there. Know your source of your ozonated glycerin. There's a lot of products coming out right now. Ozonated glycerin mixed with this, it's cut with this, it's cut with that. Okay, I have some real concerns here because PEG, polyethylene glycol, is a stabilizer, not good, not good for the body, don't want to see it. The other thing is if you cut it in half with water and then sell it as a product that way, it breaks down much more quickly. Now, when the ozone leaves the glycerin and you're left with glycerin alone, you're left with a perfect breeding ground for exactly what we're trying to prevent, right? So you need to make sure that your your ozonated glycerin is potent and is properly stored and kept. You can learn a lot more about that on OG Pro. There's also information on that on Puro 3. We officially do have, I've got an affiliate with them, and the reason is because they're doing it right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, and I noticed on the Glycocalyx Research Institute website, they have under their main menu, they have a glycocheck um, uh, word. It just says glycocheck, and if you click on that, you can look for clinics in your area that may offer this
Hmm.
testing. Are there any other ways you know of for people to find out if they're, besides cold calling, to find
Other
out?
than cold calling or looking at the clinics that have actually got it in place at this point, I don't know how people can actually find the actual glycochecks. I will tell you the average price of getting a glycocheck done is between 250 and $300. Um, I think it's a great idea to get your glycocheck done and to get an idea of where it's at, but I will also tell you that it swings like a blood pressure.
Uh,
So you need to be careful about the condition you're in at the point you get it checked. You know, it's like white coat syndrome with blood pressure. Someone walks in, they're nervous, they're upset when they walk into a clinic, and then you check their blood pressure, and next thing you know, you're trying to figure out, they're getting prescribed blood pressure medication when they don't need it. Now, that's very unlikely if that's going to happen in the glycocalyx. You can't harm the glycocalyx. You can only really help it by doing all the lifestyle and the supplementation. But I would hate for someone to go in and get tested and be obsessing over their glycocalyx being bad and further drive themselves down rather
Mhm.
than just adopting the lifestyle practices. And if someone is in a financially difficult state, do not spend money on getting your glycocheck done. Spend money on those little things that you can do to improve your quality of life. Focus on, your sleep. Focus on getting a properly set up sleep sanctuary. Focus on, getting outside. I'd rather you put the money into that than 250 to $300 for getting your glycocheck done.
Mhm.
yes, good points.
So I'm not trying to diss it. I think it's really important. I think it's really good to do. I think it's an important measurement with like our Parkinson's patients and stuff like that who are already doing all of these things. I saw some Parkinson's patients that had amazing, awesome glycocalyx scores. Same thing with ALS. So at that point, I could rule out, okay, well, the issue is not in the glycocalyx level. It's great for those cases, but that's not necessarily, it's not gonna be the first thing I'm gonna jump for.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do
Makes
all the lifestyle first stuff first, and I'm a lot of times I'm just gonna, okay, I've got a limited income. Am I gonna spend 250 to $300 on getting it checked, or am I just gonna start supplementing? I'm gonna supplement,
Yeah.
right? Save the money.
Yeah. So we've obviously talked about a lot of things today, and thank you very much for all you've invested in this. Kind of what would be your one takeaway? If you only take away one thing today to maybe do or change, I mean, you kind of just to some degree sum that up, but in a nutshell, do this.
As a man thinketh, so shall he be. Slow down, be intentional, take the time to love on your body, and take the time to love on those around you.
Yeah.
That is probably the number one most important thing you could do to improve your glycocalyx.
I love
Hold
that.
every thought captive and be intentional. And turn off the media. I'm sorry. Right now, there's so much going on in the world, and that energy is very disruptive. And I'm not saying, go ostrich head in a hole. Some people do have to go ostrich head in a hole. They really do. Their bodies are so far down that's, they just need to do this to the world, right? We really do have the ability to create the environment around us that supports not just our glycocalyx, but supports the glycocalyx of those we love.
Mhm.
And the more resilience we build there, the more that grows, and the more we can touch our neighbor. We can touch that person in the grocery store, who just looks like they need a smile. That right there, I think, is the number one thing that we need to be doing a lot more of right now.
That's
Well,
good.
yes, very good. And thank you both for the time that you've taken to bring this information to people to improve their lives with that, the ripple effect of where this knowledge goes. And I've just really enjoyed getting to know you both. Karen, I even had a dream about you the other night.
Oh, good.
Yes, you guys have definitely made an impression. And I hope that if you find anything else new, that you'll come back and share it with us.
Would be
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. All right, everybody have a good day, and we will see y'all next month. Bye bye.
Thank you. Blessings.